Hey, welcome back. So, I don't have much of a story behind this one. Find some poses I liked, made up a couple of characters on the fly, and drew them in said poses. So let's begin. Stick around to the end to see the final piece. As usual, I began sketching out the poses, keeping things very loose to start with. Once the initial sketch was done, I started adding in the features unique to these characters, such as the crystals on their shoulders and elbows, their faces and snouts, and their clothing. As I went on, a very basic narrative sprung to mind. The one on the left is death, and the one on the right is essentially beating death, both literally and metaphorically. Seems in their world, death also somewhat resembles those he reaps, a little like the death of rats from the Discworld series. Once the sketch was done, I began on the line art, using darker versions of the colors I hoped to fill the shapes with. The hardest part was definitely getting the perspective to work on Death's sickle-shaped tail, as I wanted it to look like it was popping out and coming towards the screen. When that was done, it was time to block in the color. The colors again were chosen on the fly, but once I picked one color, that informed my choice for those around it, such as making the colors on the loincloth be analogous or near analogous colors to the fur, and having the crystals of the two characters being opposing colors. Once all the color was blocked in, I began adding in the highlights and shading. I used a blotchy brush to get the softer parts of the shading done before going in again with a hard brush to mark out the bits heaviest in shadow and to add in a gleam to the scythe and sickle. The last bit was the background. Again, I was making it up as I went along. I'm detecting a pattern here. I wanted something impactful. Something to suggest speed, so made a basic ground for them to leap above and added some blur effects to give the impression of a high velocity kick. I was then going to use an iris blur to make the tail blur out while having everything else in focus, but this ended up being too tricky, so I isolated the tail before going ahead and blurring it. I put in some speed lines and an impact effect, and that felt like the final step. And with that, I was done. Let's have a look at the final piece. And if you enjoyed what you just watched, Please, be sure to leave the video a like and subscribe, and ring the bell to see more content and to help keep this channel growing. Any amount of interaction this video gets is much appreciated, and it means the world to me that there are people out there who like to see what I make. Well, see you next time.